So we're going to start, I think, here by Kern High. A couple of folks are on the line here. If you can just kind of go over your own data and talk about a little bit of the strategies that are in place to mitigate some of this.
Get my microphone on here. Thank you, Rob. As Rob said, I'm Brenda Lewis with the Kern High School District, and I also have joining with me today is Ryan Guyvik, who's our Director of Instruction. And first of all, I'd just like to say that, you know, the importance of the KID system and gathering the data, it's really beneficial, and to be able to see and across all districts what the data looks like. We looked at our data from this first semester as compared to last year, what we noticed when you look at the increase, the 14% increase in our Ds and Fs, what we found is that spread across all of our different student groups and demographics. With some of our groups, and especially district-wide with all of our students, you know, we've really seen an increase of about double when you break down the different demographics and students groups from our Ds and Fs over last year. Some of our significant student groups with increase in Ds and Fs are English learners, our foster youth, our homeless. We also found with our African American students as well. And so we have, thank you for the slide there, we have implemented and started from beginning with first semester after first quarter grades and seeing the potential of what our rates of Ds and Fs would look like at the end of the first semester. Our school sites began to employ various strategies and interventions to try to mitigate some of the credit loss, some of the learning loss with our students. Across all of our school district, across all of our schools within the districts, we have intervention programs at the individual school sites, which include specific targeted tutoring and support programs. We also have district tutoring, that's virtual tutoring that's available to our students in different subject areas. Back in October, when we were able to begin with the small cohorts, when it was physically possible to bring kids on campus, we began to target some of those intervention groups, mainly our students with disabilities, our English learners, our foster youth, and our homeless students. So what we're continuing to do is to find out the why. You know, there's a why behind the numbers, and why are students not being successful, whether it's lack of connectivity, devices, whatever the reasons are for their disengagement. All of our school sites and administrators have tried to reach out to the different students and families to find out the why, first of all, and to get them connected to the various resources that we have at the school sites in terms of talking with counselors, getting individualized tutoring support, or whatever the need may be. So that's overall kind of what we've been looking at. We've also tried to make sure that we involve our parent groups, reaching out with surveys to just try to reach the why as to why our students are disengaging. We are continually to provide staff development to our teachers on how to provide outreach to kids. We are making sure that we focus on the essential learnings and giving kids multiple ways and means of showing their learning within each of the subject areas. One of the things we're talking about now is, even though the first semester grades have closed, our principals are having conversations with their teachers that even though that first semester grade has closed, you as the teacher have the opportunity to go back and let students through multiple ways demonstrate their learning in order to be able to mitigate some of the failing grades and the Ds and the Fs of first semester. So we're not just looking at the first semester as a closed book. We're looking at the year in its totality and how we can continue within this second semester to mitigate some of those losses in the first semester, and also moving forward. A few weeks ago, State Superintendent Thurman released some distance learning guidelines, things to consider in distance learning. And many of those things are things that we've already been incorporating from the beginning of our distance learning. And that's having teachers allow flexibility with their grading and really focusing in on what the student needs to know to be able to move on. I think one of the pieces that we don't ever want to miss in this and what's incorporated in the D's and F's is the social emotional status of our students as well. So that's a component for us in having students being able to receive that social emotional support that they need during this time, because it's not only academics that are probably behind these D's and F's. There's a lot of life there too, and what families are experiencing within this environment, whether students have additional responsibilities at home, they're worried about the status of what their parents are in and trying to be successful. So there's just so much that is behind the grades. And even though we're focusing on the academics and what the students have missed and what they need to learn and how we can provide interventions to mitigate some of that loss, it's also important that we focus in on those social emotional needs of our students as we help them move forward. Ryan, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Dr. Lewis, you said it perfectly, and I would just be reiterating that the big challenge is just identifying the barriers. You know, we're a very large district. We've got lots of students, and there's just a wide array of issues that our students are dealing with. And so it's really just identifying by student, what is your barrier to success and how do we help you overcome that barrier? What supports can we provide? You know, what additional interventions can we provide? And so it's just a very challenging time. We know our students are dealing with life, as Dr. Lewis said. And so, you know, we want to continue to help them with their learning and continue to help, you know, address any failures that they have within their classes, but also know that they're dealing with real life struggles. And, you've got to kind of prioritize those life issues first in order to help the student to learn the content that they need, you know, in each of their classes. So it's just a big challenge, and trying to help our students to overcome the barriers that exist.
Great. Thank you both. Really appreciate the insight into Kern High's data. We'll move on now to Bakersfield City. Mark and Christine, are you on the line?
Good morning, Rob. Thank you very much. I think Dr. Lewis said it exceptionally well. I want to echo all of what she said. We are serving many of the same students that Kern High serves on the east side of Bakersfield. We are confronted with significant percentage of our students who are disadvantaged. And as we migrated into the start of this school year, seeing a 17% increase in D's and F's for the first trimester, we were constantly battling everything from connectivity to engagement with students. And our efforts to overcome and address support families from our SEL support structures in our district have dealt with everything from homelessness, foster care, to just the struggles of life during the fall months. As a district, we have initiated several structures to support our schools, support our teachers, and support our kids to overcome these failing grades, from teacher office hours to adjusting our middle school schedule. One of the biggest issues that we heard from everyone in the first trimester was that we had a period after the lunch break where kids would have to go to lunch, come back, and re-engage. Well, guess what? That was the biggest struggle, was getting kids to log back in after the lunch period. So we've moved our periods before the lunch break, and then after lunch, every student is enrolled in an intervention or enrichment period to meet their needs supports. Oftentimes, it's much more about engagement. It's that connection that our kids and our staff have not been able to reestablish during distance learning that we're trying to afford to our kids. Truly understanding what their challenges are, which Ryan and Dr. Lewis both talked about, so we can address those barriers, work with our families to overcome the barriers. We're also looking forward at the development of a robust summer learning program for our students, hopefully in person, so that we can bring our kids back and offer them an additional series of weeks of learning to work through the struggles. Ultimately, we all recognize here as educators that what's been lost will not be overcome in one cycle of learning. It's going to take semesters, years to put together plans to support these kids. But ultimately, as a community of Bakersfield, we're all confronting the reality that, to the point being made, this is not simply an A through F issue. This is a life issue. And as we are working with kids academically, we have to make sure we support the whole child and meet their social emotional learning needs. I'll let Christine Chapman talk about our ongoing teacher professional development supports that we have available to our staff throughout the pandemic. Again, trying to strengthen their skill set with teaching virtually.
Yes, we started in March, actually working with our teachers and really supporting them last March with how they could connect with their students virtually and online, with professional development sent out during those 3 months, as well as over the summer. You know, their ability to access the digital platforms that we were providing them had to be familiar so that they could really focus on the social emotional needs of our students and not have to focus so much on accessing, getting connected, and those things. In addition to that, we laid out essential standards for the upcoming year and what they could really focus, knowing that our instructional minutes were going to decrease in this virtual environment. And it was necessary to provide them with a roadmap to how to overcome those challenges. In addition to that, we built out lesson plans for them to provide them with that support. So again, that being online all the time is very, very taxing for our teachers, and the amount of time to prep lessons is immense. And so we taking that little piece off of them allowed them to really be a little bit more creative in their virtual instruction. We're continuing this today. We have sessions every day supporting our teachers, not only in engagement strategies, the platforms that they're using, but also how to access those lessons and that great instruction that's going to support our kids. We know these things are going to be ongoing. We are working towards that summer program in hopes that it will be in person and to really support our kids and provide them with an engaging program so that we can bring them back into the system. We know that this has been a huge disconnect for us, but we continue to plan, look at the data, and react to it as fast as possible.
Great. Thank you, BCSD. Very good stuff. Moving on to Panama Buena Vista, Jennifer and Brandy.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having us. I'm Brandy Dye. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Services in Panama Buena Vista. You can see here our graph shows a 13% increase in our Ds and Fs, which is heartbreaking. As Dr. Lewis and Mr. Lukey said, all of the same issues were present here in Panama as well. The issues of getting our students connected in the very beginning, the lags in internet, getting all the devices out to our students, it was a struggle. But once we did, we really changed our focus to what are equitable grading practices, and we focused on those equitable grading practices for our students, really wanting to look at not using grades as a means of punishment for not attending, but really using grades to measure what the students know and are able to do. So we've looked at multiple measures. One of the other large factors that we've really been pushing is that communication with parents and constant communication with parents. So we put in some pretty strong policies around if a student is heading towards failing grades, they need to be communicating with parents before those grades are issued. So it's just been a huge process of making sure parents are aware, keeping our parents informed, reminding our students that every time we start a new quarter, it's a fresh start. I think Dr. Barlow said previously that our students are surviving a pandemic, and the fact that they are doing as well as they're doing, even in the midst of this crisis, speaks to the perseverance of our students. We have a lot of the same practices going, the BCSD and Kern High School districts. We've done the accelerated curriculum maps, targeted standards, at-risk plans for our students, intervention programs. We are also planning for summer school and just a very rigorous, we're trying to make it enticing. We're going to make it a camp STEAM so we can encourage our kids to come. We're hoping it will make it an exciting venture for them. I'm excited about rolling out kids training to all of our staff so we can really do deep data dives and identify individual students that need help. We've implemented a brand new program this year. It's our multi-tiered system of supports. First year we've ever had social workers in our district. So we've really been leaning on them to make those contacts with our students who are disengaging. And we've been having a lot of success with that. But just reiterating everything the other districts said, it's a struggle, and we want our kids back in person. We want to make those relationships and those connections where you just can't do it online. It's not like when they're in the classroom, and we love our kids.
Thank you, Brandy. So we'll open it up for questions now. Let me see if I can get to the, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can't see my messy desktop there. Members of the media, if you can just put in the chat questions you might have, and I can shout those out to the group, and we'll see who's the best to answer them. I see them feverishly typing away here. So, Kristen asked a question. If the pledge worked to make sure all students and resources they needed for distance learning, why are the social disadvantaged getting more D's and F's?
So I can start with that. Again, Mary Barlow, Kern County Superintendent of Schools. I would say that even though we are ensuring that students have access to resources and that they are knowledgeable about how to use those resources, they still may not have the same supports that students have in homes that are more advantaged. And what I mean by that are access to individuals who can help them maneuver through the platforms, the Canvas platforms, the distance learning platforms. Also, technology is spotty in some parts of our county. We're working in partnership with different agencies, both our county and our city, to improve that. And then I would also say just the regular things that you would find, like reading materials in the home. Now, if we think about the students who are living in poverty, 30% of our students in Kern County are living in poverty. They have additional factors that they are overcoming that would also add to the reasons that they are being disproportionately impacted. So this is an urgent matter that we are all addressing and using as much as we can the opportunity to bring those students back to in-person instruction first because of the obvious need to really support them and put wraparound services around our students.
Thank you, Dr. Barlow. Emma from the Californian has a question. I'm curious to know more about what equitable grading policies look like at this time. Is there someone from one of the districts that can talk to that point?
So Rob, I can speak to Panama's. We spent a lot of time on this when we were forced into distance learning and really educating our teachers around not penalizing students for being absent and not penalizing students for late grades, but for late assignments, but allowing them time. We don't know what's going on in the home environment. So if they can't get an assignment in on Wednesday, but they get it in on Friday and they've demonstrated their learning, then that should count. allowing them to retake tests if they need to in order to demonstrate their learning, ensuring that their grades reflect their individual learning and not a group project. We're also looking at our grading structures. I don't know if you've ever seen the article of overcoming a zero, but when a student's given a zero on assignments, it's hard for them to overcome that and bring a grade back up. So looking at a grading scale that's more a 1-point scale, a 1, 2, 3, or a 4, where students really have the opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge and their learning and bring grades up. So those are some of the practices that we're using, giving students multiple means to demonstrate learning. If they can't type an assignment, can they speak to the teacher about their learning? So there's just several different ways that we're looking at really supporting our students and educating our teachers.
Great. Thank you for that. Someone else is asking about strategies for helping students who are still learning English. Perhaps BCSD, can you tackle that?
Sure, Rob, I can take that one. It all starts with the importance of designated language development, that defined block of instructional time where we meet the students where they are with their language acquisition levels to support them. And then that transitions into the remainder of the instructional day. This year, it's such an important message to our staff that when we're dealing with a reduced instructional day, reduced minutes, maximizing every opportunity to ensure that students are utilizing both literacy and language throughout their entire learning day. We need kids speaking, we need kids writing, we need kids reading to support them, to strengthen their needs, to offer them that targeted support. So those strategies, in addition to our support staff at the school side to can and do pull out kids for small group instruction, help to build a recipe for improved learning for our most needy students. And our ELs are one of our most needy populations in BCSD.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Anyone else have anything to add? All right. Another question is the poor performance, is this a result of poor performance in the subject matter or a result of students not doing the work?
I can start that one if someone wants to jump in too. I think I see Dr. Lewis's hand up there. Here's the reality for our children of high need in our district, that when you are, one of the biggest challenges with our teachers has been from the start is over communicating that in the reduced number of instructional minutes, you have to prioritize the learning. You can't approach this year like a traditional school year. There's simply not enough time. So how do we prioritize that learning and ensure that kids are mastering content? There's a tremendous amount of research about homework, and homework should be practice at previously mastered content. And I think as a district, we have to do better about that. We have to make sure that our homework assignments are opportunities for practicing and continued mastery of previously learned assignments. And the first trimester for our district is a glimpse at perhaps we weren't as good there. We need to get better at that practice. And so from our perspective, it is about strengthening our understanding of how do we leverage opportunities to assign work and how do we make sure kids are set up for success to complete those assignments.
Terrific. Dr. Lewis, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just to add to and not repeat some of the points that Mr. Luque just mentioned, but I think it is going back to when we started developing the courses back in Canvas in the spring, and it's to what he alluded to about focusing on what are the essential learnings that kids need to know. So that's the first thing that we did. And we wanted to make sure, as Panama mentioned before, that what you're doing, what you're including in the grading truly reflects what the student is learning, you know, and trying to get away from some of those things like, hey, the assignment was due on Tuesday, but you didn't turn it in till Thursday. So therefore you're going to suffer because of that. So if it's one thing, I think that's this distance learning environment has really emphasized for us is a really concerted focus on that, you know. And before distance learning, we were all focusing on what is it that kids essentially need to know. And and that was our focus. But in this environment, I think we're even more laser focused on that and making sure that the grade reflects the learning. Prior to the Christmas break, I did some anecdotal data by calling up principals and, hey, what are you hearing from your teachers regarding the grades and what's being reflected in those grades with the students who are not being successful. And some of it was just getting kids to turn in assignments, just to turn the work in. So then teachers began to adjust their practices by saying, hey, within this 180 minutes that I'm engaging with this student, I don't know what they have going on outside of this class. I don't know if they're babysitting. I don't know if they have to go to work or if they have to prepare dinner. So I'm going to make a way for them to be able to turn their assignments in during that period, just to assure that they're getting them in. So I would say that we're looking for all of those flexible ways to make sure that we assist students in making them also accountable for the learning, but we're also taking measures to assist them to make sure that we maximize what that grade really means. And that's that they are reflecting the learning, and we're eliminating all these other things that are not true reflection of the learning. It's being flexible and understanding.
Thank you, guys. David Kaplan has a question about kind of the technology. He referenced a math teacher in the Kern High district who has made a whiteboard. Have there been other strategies like that to provide students what students virtually would be getting in the classroom?
I can share a little bit about the Canvas platform, and I know Google has the similar situation where there's a lot of choice offered for students to go into the program and select different ways to demonstrate that they have mastered the subject, and also different ways to access content depending upon their ability and in some cases a disability. And so I believe that the advances that we've seen in Canvas and other platforms has really made it much more interactive and engaging for students. And I will now defer to all of my colleagues here from the district.
Thank you, Dr. Barlow. I think I would add that, we've looked at different means of accessing those interactive activities. We've even gone to iPads. We were just Chromebooks, so providing iPads for our teachers so that they can actually use the iPad to mark on it like a whiteboard. We've also looked at Pear Deck. It's an app that they can add that makes it much more interactive for the students, and Jamboard. We've found a lot of success with those. So just really looking at what's out there and getting our students as interactive as we can with the instruction while it's distance learning.
Thank you. Bayan has a question about which age grade noticed the sharpest decline in grades. I don't know that we have that data. We have that data, but I don't know we have it rolled up for today. Greg, is that a fair statement?
That is. We didn't prepare that for today's presentation, just the aggregate.
Perfect. And then again, similarly, what school had the sharpest increase in D's and F's? Bayan, we don't have that information at our fingertips, but we could circle back for that. A couple more here. This is for Kern High. With the knowledge of Newsom putting 10% of vaccines aside for educators and the fact that the Board of Supervisors announced that we meet the criteria for the red tier in terms of our testing positivity rate, would Kern High be able to reopen for in-person soon?
I'm going to give a response that may seem canned, but I think it's the only response I can give, and that we are planning to return students for in-person instruction as soon as we can meet all of the safety guidelines that have been put forth by the state and that have been, we work in conjunction with our local county Department of Public Health. And so as everybody stated, we believe kids should be back in school in person. That is the absolute best situation for our students, but we cannot reopen until we make sure that we get all those safety measures and meet all the requirements for reopening by the various organizations.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. One here from Kern for Bakersfield City. What are the Bakersfield City School District's strategic plan to improve student engagement and grades?
So the immediate response from our district is an adjustment to the daily schedule for our middle school, junior high school students, and that we are removing our periods to before the lunch period because we saw that students were not re-engaging after lunch. We have added an intervention enrichment period after lunch so that every child who needs support, who's at risk of failing, has that extra period, and our teachers are engaging with parents about that. We are moving forward with our summer learning plan, which is going to be a robust program where every student who's interested will receive at least 3 weeks of summer program support in literacy, mathematics, and some elements of STEAM embedded in there. We are working currently on the development of our LCAP, which all districts are. And in that initial feedback cycle, we heard, of course, from all of our stakeholder groups on the importance of mitigating learning loss and how are we going to develop systems of support for our students. So our initial presentation to our board this Thursday night in a special meeting will propose some thoughts on that, i.e. additional intervention specialists at our school sites to provide targeted assistance to those students who have an elevated need, recognizing that even when we come back to school, one of our priority strategies is small group instruction. Well, given the nature of distancing, that still may be a ways out. So how do we elevate and offer our kids additional access to intervention supports? Let's also remember that engagement comes with meeting the SEL needs of our kids. So again, leveraging all of our SEL supports, from our behavior intervention specialists to our social workers to our youth service specialists in our district that have been part of our district team for quite a while now. All in an effort to ensure that every child who needs support gets support, and then continuing this cycle of support for multiple years, recognizing we won't overcome all of the needs in one calendar year. So starting that plan, and that plan will be encompassed within our LCAP development.
Thank you, Mark. I think we have time for a couple more here. Let's see here. Is there anything that everyone hasn't asked that you want parents or the community to know?
And Rob, if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and take this question. We actually sent out a survey to our parents and we held listening posts on reopening in person. During that time, our Superintendent Russell went over basically the history of where we've been since August, how far we have come, how we were ready to bring our TK and K back, but we had to pause our learning based on quarantining of our personnel. And then moving forward with the governor's guidelines starting January 14th, the safety guidelines, our CSP and the CPP in regards to OSHA. With that, we held listening posts last week. We held 2 on February 17th and 2 on February 18th. And yesterday we held 2 in Spanish. We were able to reach over 400 parents who logged into our listening posts. And then afterwards we went into breakout rooms and they were able to give us feedback and questions. The trends that we saw revolved around safety, so we were able to put their minds at ease. Also, instructional hours, it is a concern. We understand that, but we're in the middle of a pandemic and we also have to follow all of our guidelines. And then also transportation was a concern. And we have heard from a great deal of our parents and we get back to them. We also have an email that is our open at PBBUSD. K12CAUS, and any parent can email us and they will get an individualized answer from us.
Perfect. Thank you, Jennifer. I'm going to touch on these couple more here. I'm going to mix the two. Bayan and Eitan have a question that's similar. Can you touch on what you're hearing from teachers and what they hope for the future? Anyone from the districts want to tackle that?
Well, I'll just say that our administration, our superintendency, we're in constant communication with our union representatives, and I believe our union representatives as well as our teachers, want to be back in front of students, providing that in-person instruction and support. And as I mentioned earlier, I think we all want that under the right circumstances that are safe for our students and our staff to return to our campuses safely.
Thank you. Anything else anyone wants to add on that one? Okay, final question here from Emma at the Californian. A lot of D's and F's are a lot of D's and F's related to attendance and disengagement?
So I'll take that one. It's hard to say. Generally, students want to do the best they can. Students don't go to school hoping to get a D or an F. They go to school and want to show that they're learning. I really think in this crisis, what's happening is there are extenuating circumstances that our students have no control over. A lot of our older students are helping their younger siblings, and there's a lot of responsibility put on them where their parents try to go to work. And we have, very young students trying to manage at home alone. It's hard to say if it's attendance or a disengagement or if there are extenuating circumstances. I think with a lot of our families who are challenged socioeconomically, it's due to the environment.
Thank you for that. I think that is the conclusion of the questions here. Just want to thank everybody again for their time and effort. I'm going to just have Dr. Barlow say a couple more parting words, and then I will get this recording out to our partners in the media. And I really thank you for helping us put this into context and sharing this out to our broader community. Dr. Barlow.
Thank you so much for everyone participating today. This is really important to share these messages and to recall that all of us, educators, parents, students, together represent almost a quarter of 250,000 people whose life has been turned upside down. And in a very short period of time, educators reinvented education. And so we need to keep that in mind. Our hearts are with our families and with our students, and teachers will do whatever it takes along with classified staff to ensure that students get what they need, whether it be socially, emotionally, physically, and academically to thrive. That's the work of the Kern Education Pledge. That's what we're committed to, and we're going to do whatever it takes to ensure that happens. We're learning as we go. It's imperfect. We so appreciate your grace, and know that that continued communication between parent and student and the school and the administration is what's going to make this work for all of us. Again, our first priority is to get our students back in the classroom where we know we can provide them those in-person instructions that are the very best opportunity to thrive. And we're doing whatever we can to ensure that happens, from vaccines to mitigating safety protocols. We will do what it takes to make sure that we were one of the last counties to close, and we are one of the first counties to open. So thank you.
Well said, Dr. Barrow. That's a great wrap. I appreciate everyone's time today, and we'll get this recording out shortly. And a news release has gone out with the graphs to the via email, so you should all have that as well. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.